My best friend said she was happy for me. 2 weeks later, she got engaged to my ex. I'm a 30-year-old man, and the day my best friend told me she was happy for me, she already had my ex's ring on her finger, she just hadn't posted the photos yet. Her name is Lucy. We've been friends since we were 12, school buses, study groups, the kind of friendship that survives bad haircuts and the weird years when everyone pretends not to care. My ex is Sophie. We dated 4 years. We broke up in May, quietly, the kind of quiet that makes everyone assume you'll circle back when you've both grown. I didn't tell anyone the real part, the slow erosion, the way she graded my life like a teacher with a red pen. She didn't cheat, she disappointed me 1 small centimeter at a time until I realized I was living in a house built of almosts. By August I'd inched back toward the world. I met Claire at a pottery class my sister forced me to attend because she was tired of my empty weekends. Claire had the kind of laugh that knocks a room out of its sulk. We went for coffee, then 2 coffees, then a walk where my shoulders remembered how to fall. I told nobody for weeks. I didn't want opinions layered over something still finding its shape. When I finally told Lucy, she made it simple. I sent a text, seeing someone. It's good. I'm taking it slow. She replied with a string of sensible questions, the kind you ask when you actually care about the person and not the headline. Then she wrote, I'm happy for you. We grabbed lunch 2 days later. She listened. She asked about the way Claire treats waiters, kindly, about the old habits that still climb my back at night, checking my phone for fights that aren't coming. At the end she hugged me and said I was making healthy choices. It felt like a benediction. I walked out lighter. 14 days later, my phone lit up like a bad parade. A cousin sent a screenshot from Instagram, Sophie's hand with a ring I recognized, captioned, 1,000 times yes. The name tagged next to hers was Lucy, comments stacked like chairs, screaming. Finally. Match made in heaven. My chest did that hollowness thing, like a floor losing a nail. I stared until the image stopped behaving like a picture and turned into a concept, my best friend engaged to my ex 2 weeks after telling me she was happy for me. Not 2 months. 2 weeks. I didn't call anyone. I didn't throw anything. I put the phone face down and stood in my kitchen in front of a pot of pasta I'd salted too much. I could smell burnt garlic and whatever you call the scent of trust tipping over. The ring in the photo yanked me back harder than the caption. It was mine. Or rather, my grandmother's, a simple white gold band with a tiny oval sapphire, the one she always said had weathered storms better than most people. When I proposed to Sophie 2 years ago, Grandma had pressed it into my palm with a note, if love is true, keep it, if it isn't, send her home to me. When Sophie and I split, she said the ring was a gift and didn't give it back. I didn't want to turn our end into a ledger battle. I let it go and pretended the ring was just a ring. Now it sat on Lucy's finger in a photo with the same filter Sophie always used to make winters look like fairy tales. I looked for a caption clue, a date, an explanation that allowed the brain to slide past humiliation into logic. The photos were clearly staged, the same bench by the river that Sophie had posted 10,000 mornings from, petals scattered like a florist had a checklist, a champagne bottle wearing a ribbon. In one, Lucy's profile tilted toward Sophie's shoulder and I could hear the way Lucy laughs when she's trying to be gentle with a camera. It wasn't just the speed, it was the way the scenes overlapped with my life like someone had traced them and filled in a different name. People texted like I was a spokesperson for a crisis. Are you okay? Did you know? This is fast. A friend from university wrote, she told me she'd been in love with Sophie for years. He meant Lucy. He didn't say when years started. I walked outside because walls were making me stupid. The air had that late summer thickness, the trees doing their last green bravado before September sneaks in. I sat on the curb like a kid waiting for a ride. A neighbor waved and I waved back, because friendliness exists even when your insides are a crushed can. Here is the part where people expect rage. I felt something worse, the sense I'd been edited out of a story I helped write. I scrolled back through old photos until my phone fed me our first spring, Sophie in my coat on a pier, Lucy behind the camera. It was always those two with me in the middle, like a triangle we mistook for a table. I started to notice a pattern, tiny touches, private jokes captioned public. I remember telling myself then that friendship like that is healthy, that anyone who wants to keep their partner in a box is an amateur. Maybe I was right. Maybe I was also ignoring the way Lucy looked at Sophie when she thought nobody was watching, tender like you look at a window in a store you can't afford. I didn't want to poison the present by retroactively finding sins in old pictures. I also didn't want to miss the truth because I was trying too hard to be gracious. I called one person, my sister, Hannah. She made the kind of sound you make when you walk into a door. She asked if I wanted her to come over. I said no and meant yes. She came anyway with grocery store roses and the expensive ice cream you buy when you hope sugar can do emotional labor. We sat on the floor. She didn't ask if I knew. She asked if I had a plan for seeing them again because the city is small and our circles are a Venn diagram that thinks it's a bullseye. I said I didn't. She told me a thing I didn't want but needed, that choosing quiet sometimes makes people think you're weak, but it can also be the only way to stop the other person from drafting you into their narrative as the antagonist. Hold your shape, she said. Let them move. The next day, Lucy texted. Can we talk? No emoji, which meant it was serious. I stared at the dot, the way it sits next to a name like a dare. I wrote back, when did this start? She replied, it's complicated. I said, use time stamps. She didn't reply for an hour. When she did, it was a paragraph about feelings that had developed slowly and confused her for a long time, about how she'd been protecting me while also protecting herself, about how she couldn't help what grew. I asked again, when? She said, after you and Sophie ended. I don't know why that sentence felt so expensive. Maybe because it was almost true, and almost truths are more slippery than lies. I typed, the ring. She wrote, it felt right. I put my phone away like it was a hot pan. That night, Claire knocked. I had told her I needed a day. She gave me 2 and then showed up anyway with a bag of groceries and the kind of face people bring to wake you if you're sleepwalking into traffic. She didn't ask me to perform. She chopped onions and said we were going to eat something hot even if the world was cold. I didn't realize until I was halfway through a bowl of soup that I'd gone all day on coffee and scrolling. When she left, she took out my trash and kissed my forehead. I thought about the future like it was a room I could still furnish myself. The messages started again a day later, but not from Lucy or Sophie. An old group chat kicked back to life, people from our wide, messy circle. Screenshots, rumors, timelines. Someone sent a photo of Lucy and Sophie at a street fair in June, arms linked. There was nothing romantic in the frame, the stain was in the caption, found footage of the happy couple pre-announcement winking face. Another sent a story from April of Sophie at a gallery opening, Lucy in the background, cropped out in the original, undeniable when you zoomed. None of this proves anything beyond proximity. Still, proximity is where most stories start. Ava, another friend, not in the mood for mess, DM'd me privately. She wrote, you should know, Lucy asked me in March if I thought you and Sophie were stable or just habituated. It was a weird word. She kept saying habituated. She also asked if Grandma's ring came with conditions. I read that twice. I asked if she remembered the exact date. She did. March 19th. My phone stored it like a splinter. I didn't confront. I took a notebook and started writing a timeline the way my dad taught me to fix squeaky hinges, slow, patient, one screw at a time. December, Sophie and I do couples counseling and call it communication tune-ups. February, Lucy starts a new job in the city, more time with Sophie at lunch because their offices are close. March 19th, Lucy asks about our relationship like it's a science project. Ring conditions. May 6th, Sophie and I separate, no shouting, the kind of quiet that fools even the people inside it. June, street fair. August 2nd, Lucy tells me she's happy for me after I mention Claire. August 16th, engagement post. A timeline doesn't equal motive. But it gives you a surface to hold when the room tilts. What hurt wasn't just speed, it was the choreography. The proposal photos mimicked our old life like someone had copied from my notebook. The river bench. The way Sophie's hair fell over her left shoulder, she always did that on purpose because she said her right side photographed better. Even the petals carried a memory. I used to leave little paper confetti hearts in Sophie's bag on rough weeks. She'd roll her eyes and call me corny and then keep them in a jar by her desk. In Lucy's post, there they were again, this time made of rose. My grandmother called me after the news made its way through the chain of aunts and cousins who use landlines like they're still state-of-the-art. She asked if I was eating. I lied and said yes. Then she said, "That ring knows my house," in that voice old people get when they let time talk through them. She didn't ask me to collect it. She didn't ask me to fight. She just reminded me of the note she'd tucked in the velvet box. If love is true, keep it, if it isn't, send her home to me. I heard the soft sentence under the sentence, not everything is mine to patrol, but some things are mine to name. 2 days later, I got a message that changed the story from hurt to proof. It came from a number I didn't have saved, with the kind of preface people use when they're about to drop a rock in your pocket. You don't know me well. I'm Tom. I work with Lucy. He sent a photo, Lucy's desk with a sticky note that read, "Call jeweler resizing, SAF band, March 28th. Then he wrote, "I'm sorry. I watched this happen from too close." She asked about blue sapphires in March. I didn't say anything because I thought I was misreading. I wasn't. I felt the room go very, very quiet. Not the empty quiet, the courtroom quiet. March 28th sits 12 days after Lucy asked Ava whether my relationship was habituated. 6 weeks before Sophie and I ended. It was the first non-blurry square on the map. I printed the photo because ink makes reality harder to negotiate. I put it under Grandma's note. I stared until my eyes made the letters swim. Then I wrote one sentence to Lucy, "You have something that belongs to my family." She replied with a paragraph about how gifts are gifts and she wouldn't be bullied, and another about how I was making this ugly. I wrote back, "The ring has conditions. You knew. Bring it to Grandma's on Sunday." She didn't reply. Sophie did. "Please stop," she wrote. "We're happy. This is cruel." I typed, "Cruel was March," and deleted it. I typed, "Return the ring," and sent that instead. On Sunday I drove to Grandma's with a stomach like a stone. I didn't know if anybody would show. I didn't have a speech. I had a letter from a woman born in 1932 and a photo of a sticky note from March. I sat at her kitchen table with the vinyl tablecloth she refuses to change because it handles spills like a saint, and waited. At 3:12 p.m. the door opened. Lucy first, then Sophie. No photographer. No petals. Just the two of them in the same room with the woman who gave me a ring and a rule. I didn't get up. Lucy didn't meet my eyes. Sophie did. For a second I remembered the first time she fell asleep on my couch with her mouth softly open and the TV throwing blue light at the ceiling. Memory is a thief that thinks it's a friend. Grandma asked if anyone wanted tea. Nobody did. She sat. I put the note on the table. She slid it toward them with 2 fingers. Lucy read. Sophie folded her arms. I set the printed photo next to it. Neither of them touched it. I said nothing. Silence is a tool if you can stand the weight of it. Finally, Lucy said she'd planned to resize, if it ever came back, because Sophie had always loved it and I was hoarding sentiment. Grandma said, very calmly, that the ring is not a trinket, it's a promise freighted with her dead husband's paycheck and her arthritic hand scrubbing motel sinks in 1961. Sophie said she didn't like being shamed. Grandma said shame is a feeling, not a verdict. Lucy took a breath like a swimmer and said they would consider alternatives. I nodded like a man in a meeting with a client who doesn't yet understand that the deliverable has already been decided. Sophie stared at the window like there was a better world in the glass. When they left, Grandma poured the tea we didn't want. She told me I looked like my grandfather when he was angry, very still, voice gone soft, hands flat on the table. She said it was a compliment and also a warning. Soft voices can hide knives, she said. Make sure yours is only carrying a spoon. That night, Lucy posted a new photo, Sophie's hand with a different ring, oval diamond, no sapphire. Comments praising, a change of heart, even prettier. She sent me a single text, we'll drop the blue one Tuesday. I didn't answer. I slept for the first time in 3 days. Tuesday, the doorbell rang. A small velvet box sat on my mat like a returned library book. No note. I took it to Grandma. She opened it, looked, and closed it again. She put the box on the mantel between a photo of her wedding day and a ceramic lighthouse my cousin made in 5th grade. We didn't say thank you out loud. Some thank yous are shaped like air coming back into a room. A ring came home. A story didn't. I still didn't know when their beginning began, or if the beginning matters as much as the way they wrote the middle. Claire called and asked if I wanted to see her that night. I said yes and meant it. We ate stir-fry and watched a dumb show where bakers cry over collapsed cakes. I held her hand and felt, for a few minutes, like a person with edges that still fit together. Everything had changed. Nothing had. My best friend said she was happy for me. 2 weeks later, she got engaged to my ex. A ring went back where it belonged. My chest still felt like a door that someone had forced with a screwdriver. I went to bed thinking about spoons and knives and the parts of me I didn't want this to sharpen. The ring came home, but the noise didn't die. Engagement photos without the sapphire replaced the old posts. Lucy's caption did a subtle rewrite, we chose something that feels most us. People applauded. A few friends messaged me privately that they were relieved the awkward bit was over, like the problem had been a jewelry dispute rather than the geography of trust. I decided to do nothing public. No subtweets, no long notes app manifesto. I wasn't campaigning. I wanted to repair my own roof, not set fires on theirs. But silence doesn't stop a blender once someone's hit puree. The group chat revived with a new theme, timelines. Ava sent a screenshot of Lucy's old story from March, an artsy photo of a vintage ring tray with the caption, someday. Tom added that he'd heard Lucy on the phone that same week saying, the blue one is perfect for her hands. None of this could convict a person in court. All of it convicted the version of our friendship I'd been carrying like a relic. I kept a job search spreadsheet because spreadsheets make fear behave. Interviews, follow-ups, notes. On lunch breaks, I'd walk the long way to avoid the coffee shop where Lucy and I used to debrief the world. I ran into her once on a corner near the bookstore. She said, we should talk. I said, we had years. She looked down and then up. I didn't plan to hurt you, she said. It's the sentence people say when their foot is still on your toes. I told her she didn't need to plan it for it to happen. What I wanted to ask, and didn't, was whether, happy for you, had been a real feeling or a goodbye party she threw for my dignity. Instead I asked the smaller question that had turned into a pebble in my shoe, when did it start? She said, after, again, like the word could build a wall tall enough to hide March. I said nothing. She said she'd kept her distance for months after our breakup out of respect, and that the engagement was fast because, when you know, you know. I thought about all the times I had known things and been wrong. I thought about how speed is a story people tell to make inevitability look like destiny. I walked away because arguments are just magnets for more words. At home, I found Claire sitting on my steps with a book. She closed it when she saw my face. I didn't realize until then how much I'd been bracing for her to flinch at the mess and leave. Instead, she said, "You look like you need to do something with your hands," and handed me a small box. Inside, sandpaper, 2 grades. "The shelf you started," she said. We spent an hour smoothing wood. There's a very specific piece in moving your arm back and forth until a rough edge obeys. The next week, Hannah sent me a link to an engagement party invite Lucy had posted in a story for close friends. I was on the list because none of us had done the digital unfriending yet. A rooftop bar, fairy lights, come celebrate love. I stared at it and felt the blood leave my hands. Hannah texted, "You don't have to go." Grandma called 10 minutes later and said, "You also don't have to stay away." It sounded like a riddle. She clarified, "If you go, go for yourself, not to catch anyone in a lie. If you stay home, do it because you'd rather eat soup in peace, not because you're afraid." I went, not for courage or closure, but to test whether I could stand in my own skin in a room that tried to unzip it. The bar was a movie set. Edison bulbs, a skyline trying to be supportive, the smell of citrus peel and ambition. I arrived early because late felt theatrical. Lucy wore white, which made sense and also felt like a dare. Sophie moved through the room collecting praise with a soft bucket. I posted myself near a table of tiny toasts and breathed through the first 10 minutes until my shoulders found gravity. People did the bob and weave around me, too much eye contact or none. Mark, my oldest friend from another circle, showed up because he'd promised to be visible when rooms got hard. He didn't hover. He just existed in my peripheral vision like a lighthouse you can count on. Half an hour in, Ava drifted over with a look like she'd swallowed a tack. She said, "I'm struggling." I told her she didn't have to split in two to accommodate other people's choices. She nodded at the floor and then at me. "There's something else," she said, and put her phone on the table. It was a voice memo from March 22nd, the night we'd all been at a friend's birthday. You can hear karaoke in the background. Lucy's voice is close because she must have been standing next to Ava when she hit record by accident. Lucy says, "I think I'm going to do it. I'll ask her to try the sapphire. It's obviously hers." He treats everything like a museum piece. Ava had kept the memo by accident, then on purpose, then in paralysis. She looked like a person holding fire and meal prep containers at the same time. I didn't want to be the man with evidence in his pocket at a party. I also didn't want to keep being the man who makes excuses for other people's weather systems. I told Ava I wouldn't use it to humiliate anyone. She said she trusted me. I believed her and I hated that this is what trust looks like now, a digital file on a screen and a handshake over a chasm. The speeches started, short, sweet, simple. A friend toasted, "Unexpected love." Another said, "Some things take time to see," and looked right at me in a way that made my ears hot. Then Lucy took the mic. She talked about serendipity and long roads and home. I could hear March in my head like a separate soundtrack. I wasn't going to use it. I really wasn't. Then she said a sentence that made the inside of my mouth taste like pennies: "We were so careful. We waited until it was right." The room murmured approval. I felt something inside me sit up and say, "No." I didn't take the mic. I didn't project anything on a wall. I walked to the edge of the crowd and caught Lucy's eye and said, "Can we talk privately?" We stepped behind a plant wall that was trying too hard. I told her I had a memo from March. I told her I wasn't there to play judge. I told her I'd like her to decide whether her story needed a correction and, if not, to stop using "careful" like it was a halo. She froze in that way people do when a sentence walks into a room with a hand on its hip. She said, "Are you threatening me?" I said, "No. I'm asking you to stop telling a version that forces me to be the villain just so you can feel holy." She blinked at me like a camera focusing. Then she did something I didn't expect. She exhaled and said, "You're right." It wasn't loud. It wasn't public. It didn't change the crowd's applause. But it landed like a weight on the right side of the scale. She asked if she could hear the memo. I played it. She closed her eyes while her own voice said the words. When it ended, she whispered, "I thought I deleted that night." I told her I had tried to delete 100 nights in my head and none of them had gone quietly either. She didn't walk back to the mic and confess. Life isn't a stage play with neat acts. But in the next conversation I overheard, her adjectives changed. She stopped saying, "careful," and started saying, "complicated." She stopped saying, "after," like a fence, and started saying, "around the time." Sophie heard her, frowned, and then laughed too brightly at something else. People kept clinking glasses. I went home with my dignity not shining, exactly, but intact. In the weeks after, my phone calmed. You can only be the main character of other people's group chats for so long before they get hungry for new drama. I got a job, not my dream, but a step. Claire and I kept the pace that felt human, not therapeutic. Sometimes I flinched at her phone lighting up on the table, sometimes she squeezed my knee and the flinch left my body like a bird leaving a wire. She never asked me to get over it. She asked me to tell her when the old story came back into the room so she could make space for it without letting it sit at the head of the table. Lucy and I do not talk. Not, "we're taking space." Not, "we'll rebuild." We just don't. If we pass each other on a street, I think we'll nod. That feels like the right size of kindness for what remains. Sophie and I are strangers now who share a ring's itinerary. I don't wish them harm. I do wish them honesty. Not for me. For the rooms they'll live in and the kids who might someday ask, "How did you two meet?" and deserve an answer that can breathe without borrowing someone else's oxygen. The ring sits on Grandma's mantle. Sometimes I catch her looking at it like a lighthouse. She asked once if I wanted it back for someday. I said not yet. Not because I'm scared, though I am. Because I want to hand it to someone without any ghosts hanging off the band. I want the sapphire to be a stone, not a story. A month after the party, Lucy sent a short text, "I'm sorry for the sentence, happy for you." I said it because I wanted it to be true and because part of me was relieved you wouldn't ask me questions I wasn't ready to answer. That was cowardice dressed as care. I read it twice. I didn't reply with a forgiveness I don't own yet. I reacted with a thumbs up because sometimes the smallest acknowledgement is the only one you can offer without lying. Claire met my grandmother last Sunday. We ate soup and listened to the kind of radio station that still plays violins at noon. Grandma liked her immediately, which she telegraphed by sending her home with leftovers in too many containers. After Claire left, Grandma said, "I don't worry when she stands next to you." That's unusual. It was the closest my grandmother will ever get to poetry. I wrote it down after I got home because I'm learning that some sentences deserve to be kept where you can find them on bad days. People keep asking what I learned. I want to say something expansive about boundaries and timing and the way love doesn't justify math that doesn't add up. But the thing that sticks is smaller. The next time someone says they're happy for me, I'll listen to their verbs, not their volume. I'll watch whether their hands open or clench. And if the ring in the room belongs to an old promise, I'll remember that returning it isn't a war, it's housekeeping. On quiet nights, when the house goes thin and my head tries to replay March on a loop, I put my palm on the shelf we sanded and let the smooth edge remind me that rough doesn't mean ruined, it means unfinished. I don't want to be the man who turns every hurt into evidence and every friendship into an audit. I also don't want to be the man who smiles at a photo and swallows glass. So here I am, moving forward one small, uncinematic choice at a time, answering the phone when it's my sister, letting it go to voicemail when it's a number that thinks I owe it a performance, making dinner with too much garlic and then learning where to stop, laughing when Claire forgets where she put her keys, checking on Grandma's boiler, keeping my shoes by the door. I'm not wise. I'm just a person with a notebook full of dates and a heart I'm trying not to turn into a courtroom. Some days I do better than others. And even now, with the ring home and the noise mostly quiet, there are mornings I wake up and the old picture tries to load on my mind screen, and I stand in the kitchen and breathe and admit something I'm not proud of: I still don't know what to do.
Follow me for more stories.